In today's video, I go from this router table to this, featuring a router lift mechanism and fully enclosed dust collection, and all for less than 120 kangaroos. This is my DIY router table that you've probably seen quite a few times in previous videos. I built this table just over a year ago, and it's one of the very first projects I built out of my old garden shed. It was made during a time where I was still learning how to build basic frames and cabinets, and while it absolutely does the job, it does have a number of drawbacks and usability issues that I'd like to try and address. Function-wise, this works just fine, but there are three areas in which I want to improve on this. First thing is that the height, or working height, it's actually quite low. I do need to bend over quite a lot to work onto the table, and it would be nice to bring the level up to something similar to the table saw. Point two is the height adjust. It's very difficult to height adjust as I have to rely on the trim router's mechanism underneath here to make micro adjustments, and it's very difficult to do that. So one of the things that we want to do is introduce a way to micro adjust the height, or at least adjust the height from the top of the surface rather than having to reach underneath. The third issue is dust collection. So while we have quite good dust collection when we connect a shop hose to the back of the fence here, we have no dust collection when it comes to things that fall down here. And as we know, routing can be one of the messiest things that you do. So I want to solve that. I want the new router base to have an enclosure for the router itself, and I want to include some dust collection in that solution. So likely we're going to piggyback off the hose that runs to the table saw, maybe include a T-junction here, and then run something up into here to allow for some proper dust collection. So where are we going to put this? Well, the logical thing is to put it right here. So we're going to put it into the table saw, as many people often do. We've got this big gap area underneath here. So we're also going to save a little bit of space by not having this wheeled around the shop. And we're going to be able to incorporate it into here. We're also going to probably need to make a new fence that we can bolt onto this one, or we can slot onto the top of, so that we can then use this to adjust our fence up to our router. So I think that that will be the optimal solution. To create the frame, I'm going to use my go-to product, which is FormPly. The outfeed table that I built in the previous video is already proving to be quite useful. At the miter saw, we trim the ends to get a nice clean square reference, and then cut these to final length. For the inside dados, I find that it's generally easier and more accurate to measure those based on the actual frame rather than trying to pre-cut them. To assemble the frame, I'm going to pre-drill, countersink, and use screws to join it all together. With the frame now fully assembled, we can do a quick dry fit to make sure that it fits in the space. Right, so we've done a quick dry fit here, and we start to get an idea of what we're looking for here. So we've got a nice tight fit, nice tight friction fit. So I don't even have any clamps in these sides, I just got a couple here just to prop it up to the right level. And in fact already it's pretty sturdy on its own here. So this is where our router plate is going to start in, and we're going to obviously have some more form ply that will cover this, and that'll really stiffen it up quite a lot more so than it already is, to be honest. So I think the next part we'll focus on is how this will mount to the table. So what we've got is this steel L bracket that goes along the table saw on the back of it, and we've got quite a few bolt holes that we can leverage, 1, 2, and we can probably put another one here. So on the other side here we've got some track in here. So what we'll do is we'll run some bolts through here that'll slot in there, and they'll run along the top here. We've got some holes, you can't see them, but there's a hole here, there's a couple of holes here, there's a couple of holes here, but overall that should be very, very secure. Off camera, I drilled out all of the relevant locations on the frame that will now accept all of the bolts. The holes that I have created here to allow the frame to be mounted to the table are oversized, and this will allow a little bit of wiggle room and adjustability so that when we factor in the top of the table, we can make subtle adjustments to ensure that it will be flush. With the frame now mounted, we can turn our attention to creating the router tabletop. As I'm checking to see the accuracy of the fit of the top, I suddenly realize I've made a big mistake. The realization that you've cut something too short is an experience that all woodworkers go through. If there was ever an example of the mantra, measure twice, cut once, it's this scenario right here where I've cut this perfectly nice piece of form ply 5 millimeters too bloody short. Now, the temptation was to go out to Bunnings and buy another sheet of form ply and spend another 22 bucks, but I'm certain we can fix this. So I figure if I put in a strip here, glue that to here, and once you chamfer it, you won't notice that there shouldn't be a seam line, hopefully. That's annoying, but other than that, it's starting to look okay. And in terms of flushness, once we fix it down, it'll be very nice. So let's go ahead and fix that mistake. Yeah, don't even make a mistake. Why? You cut it too short. Because what's the one rule? Measure twice, cut once. Then he measured once, and now he's had to cut twice.
Naughty daddy.
After getting scolded by the young apprentice, I thought, what better segue is there than to give a shout out and recommendation that you go check out the Aussie YouTube woodworking show, Measure Twice, Cut Once, hosted by two Aussie maker legends, Chris and Sumo. Season 6 is off and running, and they've already featured some amazing local and international makers on the show. I'll link to their channel in the description, so be sure to check them out. In what is very likely to be the last time that I use this router table, I chamfer the top to match the profile of the table saw top. Next, I mark out the area that needs to be removed for the router plate. From here, it's a simple case of cutting some clearance for our jigsaw, removing the bulk of the material as close to the line as possible, and then cleaning up using a flush trim bit on the trim router. Right, time for a little progress update. So you've just seen me install the supports underneath. Yes, I know I should have probably done that when I was doing the frame, make it a little bit easier myself, but it's fine. Some pocket holes and those are in there just fine. So the next part that I've just done off camera is to cut the insert that will go in here. So to make it easier to insert, I've just rounded over the edges on this side so that when we pop it into here, it will sit in nice friction fit. Now you'll notice that if we come and zoom in, you notice that obviously it's not flush with the top just yet. So the plan is that I'm going to use a bunch of these guys, which are threaded inserts, and then I will couple that with a grub screw or inset screw to help adjust the height of the insert plate so it's nice and flush with the table. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start marking and drilling the holes, especially for the center here, to allow for the router plate. It's worth now talking a little bit about the router lift. So it's nothing complicated. It's something that I found on Wish for about 50 bucks. It's all aluminium, iodized aluminium, so feels pretty good quality. It just uses a simple screw mechanism at the top here to lower and raise the router up and down. So we're not looking for anything super complicated here, and hopefully this will do the job. I think it will. I've already done some preliminary testing and it seems to work pretty good, but I think that this is a good compromise, at least to allow some height adjustability. So without spending a ton of money on an expensive router lift and probably a new router, we're just going to keep using what we've been using, which is working fine. And yeah, we'll see how this particular router lift goes. Now that the plate is complete, we can do a test fit with the router lift mechanism and also check that the plate leveling system is going to work. Adjusting the plate height is easy with the 4 grub screws located in each corner. It's simply a matter of adjusting them with an Allen key to lower or raise the plate to get it flush with the surface. There is also plenty of clearance for the spanners on the top, which means no more reaching underneath to try and change out router bits. And of course, the moment we've all been waiting for, testing the lift mechanism for the router itself. This should certainly make adjusting the height much faster and much more accurate. Okay, so I'm very happy with how this is coming out so far. This is working really well. We've got a nice flush surface here. The router lift mechanism works pretty good, so no complaints there. So plenty of clearance when the router is lifted all the way to the top to be able to get my spanner in to change the bits, so that's a positive. The next thing that we need to work on is the box that goes underneath the router that will shroud the router in. So we're going to have a box that goes down and around this to enclose it, and then hopefully run some dust collection from that. So I guess we'll get cracking with that. We now have our fence on. So I've recycled the old fence. I was contemplating building a new fence, but it just seemed a waste of materials because this fence is perfectly fine. So there was really no point making a new fence. Still nice and flat, still nice and square. So we're going to keep the old fence. It's attached with a couple of inset screws that are in the table, and it's adjustable through loosening these two bolts, or these two screws, and then moving the fence forward and back and then tightening it. Off camera, I did make some inserts, so several different sizes, different hole sizes, depending obviously what bits we're going to be using. Those all fit nicely in there and can obviously be easily changed. So I've made a whole bunch of those, got a couple of spares, so we'll keep those just in case we decide that we need a new one. But other than that, I think we are on the home straight. So we only have a few more things that we need to realistically do. And one of those things is sorting out the dust collection for the base of the router. One of the goals of this project is to use up as much of what I had on hand as possible, and this ducting is going to be no different. I have this T-junction left over from the ducting of the workshop, and I know while it's not ideal, it should do the job for at least the time being until I source a more appropriate and good fitting. Next on the list is to whip up a door for the router enclosure. With the final piece in place, we can now do our first test cut. Setup for the router is really simple. First, we loosely bolt our fence to the table. We then raise our router so that we can install the bit. Set our fence and tighten it down. Lower our bit to the desired height. Add our throat plate. Open the blast gate to our dust extractor, and finally add our shot vac to the dust collection port on our fence. And I think there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. So router table basically complete. So the door opens up, allows us to turn the trim router on. Now I could hook up an external power switch so I didn't have to open the door and reach in, Obviously, there is the possibility of routing a switch externally, maybe just to the side here. But to be honest, it only takes a second to open the door, turn the switch on from underneath, and works just as well. So I don't think there is a real rush to add a switch, but certainly something we can do in the track. So in regards to dust collection, we have our blast gate here, so very easy to close and open. Obviously, we're probably going to start accumulating some dust in here. I'm not too fussed about that. It's very easy just to open the door and give it a quick vacuum. Of course, if I add some diagonals in here, that'll help channel the dust to fall and go into here. So I probably will end up doing that, but I'm honestly not in any hurry to do that. It is already working okay, and I think it's just a matter of opening the door, giving it a quick vacuum, should be okay, but something that I probably would add in the future. In regards to the router lift, seems to be working really well. Very simple design, 50 bucks on Wish. Look, I'll try and link to what I bought, and certainly there's probably a whole bunch of other places you could get something very similar. Will it last? I have no idea, but for 50 bucks it was worth giving it a shot, and so far so good. It's working really well. In regards to our ducting that we've put in here, it's not ideal. So we do have this T intersection here. So this runs off my dust collector. I know that T-section obviously isn't ideal when it comes to dust collection. It does obviously limit or reduce the amount of suction that you get from it because of obviously the directions it has to go. I haven't noticed too bad a reduction so far. I may need to put another blast gate here anyway, just to make sure that the router gets as much suction as possible. And what I may need to eventually do is switch out this T-section for something like well, essentially something like that, which is like a Y section that would sort of help in terms of improve the airflow. In the end, excluding what I already had on hand, the total upgrade cost was less than $120, with the bulk of that coming from the cost of the router lift itself, as well as a couple of sheets of form ply from the local big box. Overall, I'm really happy with the result and can't wait to use it in future projects. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.